Now, there's a fundamental disagreement between the FA and the Premier League over rules which place limits on international footballers playing in England, we at Sky Sports News can reveal. Now, as part of a special investigation, we've been told this is one of the biggest stumbling blocks between the two sides in the negotiations about the future of English football, which have been ongoing since the publication of the fan-led review in 2021. Our senior reporter, Rob Dorsett, joins me to explain this. So, explain.
I'll do my best. Listen, important to say first and foremost that neither side is having anything public to say on this because these are very significant and confidential negotiations that are taking place. But as you mentioned there, it's already developed into a major area of disagreement, as I understand it, between the FA and the Premier League. And the reason why every football fan will be looking at this going, oh, why do I care? Because this issue is absolutely fundamental in which Premier League team you support, whichever one it is, what transfer business they may be able to do in the summer. Who can they target? Who's going to be allowed to enter this country and get a work visa? Who's going to be barred from doing so? The Premier League clubs want the rules relaxed and are pushing very hard for that to happen. The FA are adamant that those rules will not be relaxed. And I've managed to obtain some pretty startling statistics, which we're going to show you over the next 4 or 5 minutes, which have come from various sources who have interests in this area, shall we say. And the reason we've got those 4 players behind you, Mike, is because those big names, Riyad Mahrez, Alexis McAllister, Gabriel Martinelli and Karu Matoma as well, are 4 players who, under the current rules, would not be eligible to enter the UK, get a work visa and play in the Premier League if they had the level of experience now when they try to get in that they had back then. So that's significant. Let's show you the first statistic, shall we, that we've been looking at. And this is absolutely central to the Premier League's argument with the FA. Over the past 10 seasons, you can see there, look, 1 in 7 Premier League transfers would have been ineligible under the current rules. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
1 in 7 of all the transfers that have happened in the past 10 seasons would not have been allowed. You can also see there 35% of transfers made in Europe into the other big 5 leagues, again, over the past 10 seasons, would not have met the current criteria for a work visa here either. So that's 35% of players that European clubs have been able to sign, which Premier League clubs have not been able to sign. And for under-21s figures, right at the bottom there, look, that figure is actually 57% of all transfers across those big European leagues. Now, because of those stats, the Premier League clubs feel they're at a disadvantage to their big European rivals, and they're being forced to pay higher prices for those players as well. So that's why they want them relaxed. That sounds pretty convincing, doesn't it? Let's look at the other side of the debate, though, because the FA are determined that there should be no relaxation of the rules. In fact, the FA would like to see the rules toughened to limit the number of international players coming into the Premier League, to give maximum opportunity, maximum game time, if you like, to the English youngsters that are coming through. They want to do that for the good of English football generally, but specifically to help Gareth Southgate and the chances of the national team. And if we move the graphics on and show you the next group of statistics, we can show you this is the biggest argument on the FA's side. It's the number of minutes played by under-21 players in their domestic leagues so far this season, across the big 5 leagues in Europe. And if you look at that first one, look, Ligue 1, French under-21 players have played over 70,000 minutes of football. If you look next, Spanish players, 40,000, under-21 Italian players, 22,000. All of those are above English qualified players playing in the Premier League, who've had, look, 4th on that list, just over 20,000 minutes of time.
But the Premier League's a stronger league than Liga, so there you have it.
That's the Premier League's argument. That's absolutely the Premier League's argument as I understand it. And in fact, one Premier League insider said to me that 30 minutes of Premier League football in his eyes is worth more than 60 minutes of game time in Ligue 1, such is the difference in quality. But that concern that you've seen there is for the FA. They believe that English youngsters are not getting enough game time, and Gareth Southgate and future England managers will pay further down the line.
But Rob, sorry to interrupt, but in the 80s, we had lots of English men playing in the top league, and the English national team wasn't any good.
That's a perfectly fair argument as well. And if you go on skysports.com, we've got a bigger, more comprehensive analysis of all of this, and some of those stats are on there. But let's show you the next statistic, I think, which reinforces the FA's argument of the total minutes played by under-21s in the Premier League this season. Look, only 30% of the total minutes have been played by English under-21 players. So that means 70% of the minutes from under-21s players have been played by international players. Compare that, look, with what's happening in La Liga and Ligue 1 in France and Spain, 69%. So the FA is really concerned that English youngsters simply aren't getting enough game time. One FA insider told me, quote, "We are very supportive of the Premier League and the clubs, and this is the important bit, but we cannot and will not allow changes that would damage the England men's and women's team." Let's play you a little clip from Martin Glenn, the former FA chief executive, who I've interviewed on this subject, and he's very supportive. He understands the complexity of this argument, in fairness to him, and he understands both arguments. But having been there at the helm for himself, having appointed Gareth Southgate himself as England manager, he understands the problems the FA are facing.
The trends don't surprise me. They've always been a bit like that. And I think it then sort of, once again, comes back to a sensible balance, which is how do you reconcile a legitimate desire to want England teams to have the best raw material to compete in tournaments, with Premier League clubs being, you know, the best in the world and the most advantaged. And there's no right or wrong answer on it. I keep coming back to it, but the stakes are high for good reasons.
Right. So the FA is going to decide which players can be brought into the Premier League. Now, the Premier League clubs have fantastic scouting networks. Who are the FA to tell them you can spend your money on that player, but you can't spend it on that one?
Well, the FA would argue that they're the custodians of the game, and they would argue that the Premier League clubs have the benefit of the whole of the football pyramid, the grassroots system. The kids, when they come through, they're schooled by the FA and the FA's clubs. It's only when they get into the academies they become the Premier League's property, if you like. And so the FA believe that the Premier League has a responsibility for the good of English football as a whole. That's their argument. But how does the FA decide which international players are playing at a good enough standard to come into this country? This is the issue of governing body endorsement. So let's show you our next group of stats. If we look at this table first, look, it tells you how the FA decides which countries are the best at football and which countries are the worst at football. So look in band 1 there, Germany, Spain, Italy and France. If a Premier League club wanted to sign a player from them, almost certainly they'd be able to do so. They're coming from a very high standard league. As long as they're playing regular football domestically in that thing, they'll go for that. By contrast, if you look at band 5, China, Poland, Sweden, Serbia, Slovenia, Chile, the Premier League clubs are telling me they simply can't get players from there because it's very difficult to get them enough points to get the governing body endorsement and get a work visa. Move on to the next group of statistics, look, and these are the banding rules. This is very complicated, but what you need to do is look at the two highlighted areas if you can. And if you play in 30% of your games in 1 to 10, so if you're in a country where you're highest ranked by FIFA, it's almost certain, look, that you only need to play in 30% of your international matches and you'll get a work visa here. If you're in ranked 31 to 50, so Chile or Nigeria qualify player, it's much more difficult. You've got to play in 70% of your international matches to get a work permit here. Look, we'll tell you more about this in the next hour.
Yeah, definitely.
But this is a really interesting topic. It's a complicated one. We'll hear more from Martin Glenn, but this is a huge issue between the FA and the Premier League, and it's one that's not going to go away, simple as that.